One mark on her neck and the CEO forgot it was just a contract marriage. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support truly means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Please drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us go back to our main character. She stood just inside the doorway of the penthouse, one hand still on the handle, as if she might turn around and leave. The city lights outside the floor-to-ceiling windows painted long shadows across the marble floor. It was past 10 at night. She was later than usual, and she knew he would notice. He always noticed time. The CEO was sitting on the sofa, jacket already off, sleeves rolled neatly to his forearms, a tablet resting in his hand. He looked up the moment the door closed. His eyes moved over her the way they always did, quick and assessing, out of habit more than interest. That was how it was supposed to be. This marriage was a contract, nothing more. Then his gaze stopped. Just below her jaw, half hidden by the collar of her coat, was a faint mark, not dramatic, not fresh enough to be alarming at first glance, but visible, a soft discoloration against her skin that did not belong there. He froze. For a second, the room felt too quiet. Even the distant sound of traffic 40 floors below seemed to fade. She felt it before he said anything. The shift in the air. The way his posture changed. She reached up instinctively, fingers brushing her neck, and her stomach tightened. That was when he stood. He did not raise his voice. He did not slam the tablet down. He simply walked toward her, slow and controlled, every step deliberate. The kind of calm that usually unnerved boardrooms full of men twice her age. That was not there this morning, he said. It was not a question. She swallowed. In the contract they had both signed, very clearly and very professionally, there was a clause about personal boundaries, about private lives remaining private, about no questions, no jealousy, no emotional interference. This moment violated all of it. It is nothing, she said quickly. Too quickly. His eyes darkened. Not with anger, with something far more dangerous. Who did that? He asked. The words hung between them. She stared at him, stunned. For a heartbeat, she forgot where she was, forgot the agreement, forgot the reason she had agreed to marry a man she barely knew. She only saw a man who looked at her as if something had been taken from him. It does not concern you, she said, forcing her voice steady. You said it yourself. This marriage is just a contract. Mess it is had. He let out a short breath that almost sounded like a laugh, but there was no humor in it. Yes, he said slowly. That is what I said. He stopped less than 3 feet away from her now, close enough that she could smell his cologne, close enough that she could see the tension in his jaw. And yet, he continued, someone left a mark on my wife. The word hit her harder than it should have. Wife. They never use that word in private. In public, yes. At galas and charity dinners. In front of investors and cameras. But here, in the quiet of the penthouse, it was always first names, always distance. You do not get to say that like it means something, she said. His gaze dropped to her neck again, then lifted back to her eyes. I do not get to ignore it either. She turned away, slipping out of her coat, needing space, needing air. Her heels clicked sharply against the floor as she walked deeper into the apartment, every step a reminder of how carefully constructed her life had become since the day she signed that contract. She had agreed to this marriage for one reason, survival. He had agreed for his own reasons, image, stability, control. They had laid out the rules with the same precision he used in his business deals. No love, no attachment, no lines crossed. And yet, here they were. You were not supposed to care, she said quietly. I do not, he replied immediately. But the lie came too fast. She stopped near the window, the city stretching endlessly below her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence pressed in, heavy and uncomfortable. Finally, she turned back to face him. You want to know who did this? She asked. Fine. But understand this first. You asked for a wife on paper. You asked for appearances. You do not get my past. You do not get my pain. And you definitely do not get to be angry about it. He held her gaze, unflinching. "Then why?" he said, his voice low and controlled. "Do I feel like someone crossed a line that should never have been crossed?" She had no answer for that. And somewhere between the contract they had signed and the mark on her neck, the rules of their marriage began to crumble. She did not sleep that night. After the lights in the penthouse dimmed and the city outside slowed into a distant glow, she lay awake in the guest bedroom that was never called a guest bedroom. In the contract, it was labeled secondary private space. Neutral, clean, safe, just like the marriage. She stared at the ceiling, one hand resting lightly at her throat. The mark was already fading, but the memory of his eyes when he saw it was not. That look had followed her into the dark, heavy, and impossible to ignore. This was not how it was supposed to feel. When she had agreed to marry him, it had been in a quiet law office with glass walls and a view of the river. No flowers, no vows, just signatures and carefully chosen words. He had sat across from her in a tailored suit, calm and unreadable, while his attorney explained the terms as if they were discussing a real estate transaction. 2 years. Public appearances as required. Absolute discretion. No emotional obligations. She remembered nodding, pen steady in her hand, telling herself this was not romance. This was survival. At the time, she had been running out of options. Her mother's medical bills were piling up faster than she could count them. The house she grew up in was weeks away from foreclosure. Every job interview ended the same way, with polite smiles and promises that never turned into calls. And the man she was trying to escape from, the man who had once sworn he loved her, had made it clear that leaving was not something he accepted easily. The contract marriage had not been a dream. It had been a lifeline. Marrying a powerful man came with protection, with silence bought and enforced, with doors that closed behind her past so firmly that it could not follow her inside. That was why she had said yes. Not because she trusted him, not because she believed in him, but because the CEO did not ask questions about her history. He did not want her heart, he wanted her presence, her name beside his, her face at events, her compliance, and she could give him that. She had told herself the arrangement would keep her safe, that inside the clean lines of his world, nothing messy could reach her. Tonight proved how wrong that was. The next morning, she moved through the penthouse quietly, as she always did. She dressed in a simple blouse and skirt, professional and neutral, the kind of outfit that made her easy to photograph and easy to forget. When she stepped into the kitchen, he was already there, standing at the counter with a cup of black coffee, sleeves rolled, phone pressed to his ear. "Yes," he said into the phone, voice sharp and controlled. "Move the meeting to Thursday." "No, do not ask why." He ended the call and turned when he sensed her presence. For a moment, neither of them spoke. In the daylight, the mark on her neck was barely visible, but his eyes still went there first. "You should stay home today," he said. She stiffened. That was not part of the agreement. "This is not an order," he replied. "It is a precaution." "I do not need your protection," she said, though the words tasted thin. His jaw tightened. "You married into my life. Whether you like it or not, that makes you visible." She met his gaze, something steady and defiant rising in her chest. "I married into your name, not your control." Silence stretched between them again. He exhaled slowly as if recalibrating. "You said you wanted this marriage to stay simple," he said. "So did I. But something from your life followed you here." Her fingers curled at her side. "And if it did," she asked quietly, "would you tear up the contract?" The question hung in the air, heavier than either of them expected. He did not answer right away. And in that pause, she realized something that unsettled her far more than the mark on her neck ever had. For the first time since she signed her name on that contract, she was no longer sure which of them needed this marriage more. The contract had always been the one thing that kept everything in place. That afternoon, she found it again in the drawer of the desk in the shared study. It was exactly where it had always been, inside a slim black folder, pages crisp and untouched, as if paper alone could keep emotions from spilling over. She did not mean to open it. She told herself she was only looking for a pen, but her fingers hesitated on the edge of the folder, then slid it free. The first page greeted her with both their names printed in clean, legal type, hers beside his, Equal in ink, unequal in power. She remembered how carefully she had read every line before signing, how she had memorized the rules like armor. Clause 1. This marriage exists for mutual benefit and public presentation only. Clause 2. Neither party shall interfere with the personal relationships or private history of the other. Clause 3. Emotional attachment is neither expected nor required. She exhaled slowly. Last night, he had broken Clause 2 without even realizing it. She closed the folder just as footsteps sounded behind her. "You keep it like a weapon," he said. She turned. He was standing in the doorway, jacket back on, ready to leave for the office. His expression was composed again, the familiar mask firmly in place. If she had not seen the way his control cracked the night before, she might have believed nothing had changed. "It is the only thing that reminds me what this is," she replied. "And what is it?" he asked. "A deal," she said. "A clean one. You do not ask. I do not explain." He stepped into the room, closing the distance between them with the same quiet authority he carried into every negotiation. "That only works," he said, "when the past stays where it belongs." Her pulse quickened. "You do not get to decide that." "I do when it affects my reputation," he said evenly. There it was, the truth beneath the concern, beneath the jealousy he refused to name. She straightened. "If this marriage is about image," she said, "then understand something. I have never embarrassed you. I have never given the press a reason to question us. I have done exactly what you asked." His gaze softened, just slightly. "That is true." "Then trust me," she said, "or do not. But do not pretend this is about protection." Silence settled between them again, thick with things neither of them wanted to say out loud. Finally, he looked away. "There is a charity gala on Friday," he said, shifting back into familiar territory. "You will attend." She nodded. "As your wife." "As my wife," he confirmed. "The board will be there, investors, media." "And?" she asked. "And I need you focused," he said. "Whatever followed you here stays invisible." She hesitated, then asked the question she had been holding back. "And if it does not?" His jaw tightened. "Then we handle it." The words were calm, practiced, but something about them unsettled her. They sounded less like a business strategy and more like a promise. After he left, the penthouse felt too large, too quiet. She returned the contract to the drawer, but it no longer felt like protection. It felt thin, fragile. She had entered this marriage, believing rules would keep her safe, that distance would protect them both. But rules only worked when both people wanted to follow them. And she was beginning to see that the CEO she married on paper was no longer interested in pretending this was just a contract. By Friday evening, the city felt sharper, louder, more demanding. The charity gala was being held at one of the most exclusive hotels downtown, the kind where valet lines curved around the block and security checked names twice. When she stepped out of the car beside him, cameras immediately turned. Flashes lit up the sidewalk like distant lightning. His hand settled at the small of her back, steady and warm. To anyone watching, they looked flawless. Inside the ballroom, crystal chandeliers cast soft light over polished floors and tailored suits. Servers moved silently between guests with trays of champagne. Her name was announced alongside his, spoken smoothly, confidently, as if she had always belonged there. She smiled when expected. She nodded when introduced. She played her role perfectly. This was the version of marriage they had practiced. Throughout the evening, he never left her side for long. When investors approached, he rested his hand on her arm. When photographers called for them, he leaned in just enough to make it look intimate, not affectionate, controlled, intentional. She told herself it meant nothing. At one point, as they stood near the balcony overlooking the city, a woman from the board smiled knowingly at her. "You balance him," she said. "He has been different since you married." Her stomach tightened, but she returned the smile. "He has always been very focused." The woman laughed softly. "Yes, but now he listens." She did not look at him. She did not want to see his reaction. Later, when the music softened and conversations grew quieter, she excused herself and stepped outside onto the terrace. The cool night air brushed against her skin, grounding her. For a moment, she allowed herself to breathe. She had done this dozens of times before. Appear, perform, disappear when needed. The sound of footsteps behind her made her tense. "You should not wander off alone," he said. She turned. "You are not my security detail." "No," he agreed. "But tonight, you are my wife." "When?" The words carried weight again, more than they should have. He stepped closer, his voice lowering. "Are you all right?" The question caught her off guard, not because it was kind, because it was real. "I am fine," she said. "I always am." He studied her face, as if searching for cracks beneath the polish. For a moment, she thought he might press further. Instead, he straightened and offered his arm. "We should return," he said. As they re-entered the ballroom, she became acutely aware of how easily he shifted between roles. CEO, host, husband, protector, each one worn with precision, but something was changing. She noticed it in small moments. The way his gaze tracked her across the room when she spoke to other guests. The way his grip tightened when a man stood too close. The way his expression hardened when someone mentioned her past, even vaguely. This was not part of the agreement. After the final speech and the last round of applause, they left amid congratulations and whispered admiration. In the back of the car, the silence felt heavier than usual. "You were exceptional tonight," he said. She nodded. "That is what you hired me for." He did not respond immediately. The city blurred past the window as the car moved through traffic. "That is not what this is," he said finally. She turned toward him. "Then what is it?" He looked at her, truly looked at her, and for a split second, the mask slipped. "I do not know," he admitted. "But I am starting to understand that pretending it is nothing is no longer working." Her chest tightened. "Then stop pretending," she said softly. "Or remember why we started." The car pulled up to the penthouse. The ride was over, but the tension followed them inside. As the door closed behind them, she realized something unsettling. They were no longer just acting married in public. Somewhere between the contract and the cameras, the lines had blurred. And the man she had married for protection was beginning to look at her as if she was something far more dangerous to his carefully controlled world. Something real. By the time they returned to the penthouse, the restraint he had held onto all night was gone. The door closed behind them with a quiet click, but the silence that followed was anything but calm. She took off her heels slowly, setting them by the door as she always did, grounding herself in the routine. It was easier than thinking about the way his eyes had followed her every move at the gala. She straightened, turning toward the hallway. "Do not," he said. The single word stopped her. She looked back. He was still standing near the door, jacket draped over his arm, his posture rigid. The city lights behind him framed his silhouette, sharp and imposing. "We are not doing this tonight," she said carefully. "We are doing this tonight," he replied. She folded her arms, instinctively defensive. "You said you wanted this marriage simple." "I said I wanted it controlled," he corrected. "That is not the same thing. Thank you for watching." He set his jacket down and walked toward her, stopping at a deliberate distance, close enough to be intimate, far enough to be restrained. "Who was he?" he asked. Her breath caught. "I told you before. You do not get to ask that." "You walked into my home with a mark on your neck," he said, his voice low and even. "Then you stood beside me tonight while men smiled at you like they knew something I did not. So yes, I get to ask." She felt the familiar rise of anger, sharp and protective. "You do not own me." "I did not say I did." "Then stop acting like you do." The words echoed in the open space between them. He ran a hand through his hair, a rare break in his composure. "Do you think I enjoy this?" he asked. "Do you think I enjoy standing in a room full of people pretending I do not care while someone else leaves marks on you?" She stared at him. "Pretending?" He caught himself, jaw tightening. "That is not what I meant," he said. But they both knew it was exactly what he meant. She turned away, walking toward the window. The city spread out below her, endless and indifferent. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, quietly, "It was not someone I chose." The air shifted. He went still. "What does that mean?" She hesitated, every instinct telling her to stop, to retreat behind the safety of silence. But something about the way he stood there, no longer the untouchable CEO, made it impossible. "It means," she said slowly, "that before I married you, I was involved with someone who did not like being told no. He did not interrupt. I thought leaving would be enough, she continued. I thought marrying you would end it. Your name, your influence. I believed that would make me unreachable. She laughed softly, without humor. I was wrong. One of that, Rosand. He crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping just behind her, not touching. Not yet. Did he hurt you? He asked. The question was different this time. Not jealous, not demanding. Protective in a way that made her chest ache. It was not the first time, she said. The words hung heavy in the air. When he spoke again, his voice was dangerously calm. You should have told me. And done what? She asked, turning to face him. You would have sent lawyers, security, made it disappear. That is how you solve problems. Yes, he said, and I would have done it gladly. She shook her head. That is not what I needed. What did you need? He asked. She searched his face, seeing the conflict there, the control slipping through cracks she had never seen before. I needed it to be over without becoming another transaction. He exhaled slowly. You married the wrong man for that. She almost smiled. Almost. I know. For a moment, neither of them moved. The space between them felt charged, fragile. You said this marriage was about protection, he said. If that protection failed you, then I failed you. That was not part of the contract, she replied. I am no longer talking about the contract, he said. Her pulse quickened. Then what are you talking about? He reached out, stopping just short of touching her neck. This. The restraint in that simple gesture undid her more than any anger could have. You crossed the line tonight, she said softly. Yes, he agreed, and I would do it again. She looked up at him, searching for the man who had once insisted emotions were unnecessary. This is dangerous, she said. So is pretending I do not care, he replied. The truth settled between them, undeniable and terrifying. This marriage had started as a shield, a business arrangement designed to keep them both safe from different kinds of threats. But somewhere along the way, the shield had cracked. And now, neither of them was sure whether what stood between them was protection or something far more powerful. Something neither contract nor control could contain. The next morning, the penthouse felt different. Not louder, not quieter, just charged, like the air before a storm that refused to break. She woke early, long before the city below fully stirred. For the first time since moving into this place, she did not go straight to the window. Instead, she sat on the edge of the bed, feet on the cool floor, replaying the night before in fragments she could not organize. His voice, too calm, too controlled. The way he had looked at her neck without touching it. The way he had said he was no longer talking about the contract. That part unsettled her the most. She dressed slowly, choosing something simple, something that felt like armor. When she stepped into the kitchen, he was already there again, as if sleep had been optional. He stood by the counter, coffee untouched, staring out at the skyline. They acknowledged each other with a glance, nothing more. Did you eat? He asked. The question was ordinary. The tone was not. I will later, she replied. He nodded, as if filing the information away. I have meetings most of the day. Of course you do. He turned to face her. I will have someone pick you up at noon. 9. Wine. She stiffened. For what? A private appointment, he said. Doctor, security will accompany you. No, she said immediately. His jaw tightened. This is not negotiable. Her hands curled into fists at her sides. You promised me this marriage would not turn into surveillance. And I promised you protection, he replied. I will not watch you bleed and call it respect. The words landed harder than she expected. I did not ask you to fix this, she said. I asked you not to turn my life into one of your strategies. He stepped closer, stopping at the same careful distance he had maintained the night before. I am not trying to control you, he said. I am trying to make sure no one ever puts their hands on you again. Her voice softened despite herself. You cannot guarantee that. I can try, he said, and I always finish what I start. That was what frightened her. By noon, she was in the back seat of a black car she had not requested, watching the city slide past as if she were no longer entirely in control of her direction. She told herself she could have refused. She told herself she still could, but a part of her was tired. The appointment was discreet, efficient, no questions asked beyond what was necessary. When it was over, she sat alone in the waiting room for a long moment, staring at her reflection in the darkened glass. She looked composed, untouched, safe. The illusion felt thin. That evening, when she returned to the penthouse, he was waiting. Not in the living room, in the study. The contract lay open on the desk between them. "You went through my files," she said. "I reviewed our agreement," he corrected. She crossed her arms. "And? And it does not account for this," he said, tapping the page. "For threats that do not respect paper." She stepped closer, stopping across from him. "You cannot rewrite this because it makes you uncomfortable." "I am not uncomfortable," he said. "I am angry." The admission surprised them both. "You told me this marriage was a shield," she said. "If you turn it into a cage, I will walk away." His gaze snapped to hers. "You cannot. Watch me." The silence that followed was sharp, brittle. Finally he spoke. "If you walk away, he wins." She flinched. "Do not say his name like you know him." "I know enough," he said. "And I know that hiding behind a contract will not stop someone who believes he still owns you." Her breath caught. "I am not owned by anyone." "No," he agreed. "And that is exactly why I am standing here." She searched his face, looking for calculation, for manipulation. What she found instead unsettled her far more. "Resolve. You are crossing every boundary we set," she said. "Yes," he replied. "Because those boundaries were built for convenience, not safety." His goad. "To thou Simonis." She shook her head slowly. "This is where fake marriages fall apart, when one person forgets it was never supposed to be real." He did not look away. "And this is where pretending ends." Her heart pounded. "What do you want from me?" He paused, choosing his words with a care that felt unfamiliar. "I want you to stop carrying this alone." "That is not something you can demand," she said. "No," he agreed. "It is something I am asking." The shift was subtle, but it changed everything. She looked down at the open contract, at the neat signatures that had once felt like salvation. "If I let you in," she said quietly, "this stops being simple." "It stopped being simple the moment someone touched you," he replied. The truth settled between them, heavy and irreversible. This marriage had been designed to be temporary, controlled, clean. But now it was becoming something else entirely. Not because of desire, not because of convenience, because somewhere between protection and possession, the CEO she married on paper had begun to care in a way no contract could regulate, and she was no longer sure whether she was ready to stop him. The breaking point came faster than she expected. It started with a phone call she was never meant to hear. She was in the sitting room, reviewing notes for an upcoming public appearance, when his voice carried from the study. The door was half closed. He was not speaking loudly, but the tension in his tone made her look up. "No," he said sharply. "That is not an option." A pause. "I do not care who leaked it," he continued. "If this goes public, the damage will not be limited to me." Her stomach tightened. She stood slowly and moved closer to the door, every instinct telling her to stop and listen. "You assured the board this marriage was stable," a voice on the other end said faintly, just loud enough for her to catch. "Now there are concerns." He exhaled, controlled but strained. "Concerns about what?" "About whether this arrangement is real," the voice replied, "and whether it exposes the company to unnecessary risk." The word arrangement landed like a blow. She stepped back before he could see her. By the time he emerged from the study, phone lowered, his expression was unreadable again. "You should not have been listening," he said. "You should not have been talking about me like I am a liability," she replied. The air between them hardened. "The board received information this morning," he said. "Someone has been asking questions about you. About your past." Her chest tightened. "Who?" "That does not matter," he said. "What matters is that they are using it." She laughed once, bitter and sharp. "Using it to do what?" "To challenge the marriage," he said. "And by extension, my leadership." There it was, the real threat. "So this is about your position," she said. "Not me." His gaze flickered. "It is about both." She shook her head slowly. "You said you wanted me safe. You did not say you wanted me silent. I am trying to protect you, he said. No, she replied. You are trying to control the fallout. The words hung heavy between them. The board is demanding assurances, he continued. They want to review the contract. They want proof that this marriage is contained. 172. Her hands curled at her sides. And if it is not? Then they will push for it to end, he said, quietly, if possible. The room felt suddenly too small. So that is it, she said. When things get complicated, you cut losses. That is not what I said. It is exactly what you said, she shot back, just dressed in corporate language. He took a step toward her. If they expose your past, it will not just be embarrassing, it could be dangerous. And whose fault is that? She asked. Mine, for trusting you, or yours for turning my life into leverage? His jaw tightened. You knew this marriage came with scrutiny. I knew it came with rules, she replied. I did not know it came with threats. Silence stretched between them, brittle and sharp. Finally, she spoke again, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. If your board wants reassurance, give it to them. He frowned. What does that mean? It means, she said, you tell them whatever makes them comfortable. You tell them this marriage is exactly what they think it is. A contract, a performance, a calculated move. That is not true anymore, he said. She looked at him then, really looked at him. It is not true for you, she said, but it has always been true for them. His eyes darkened. You are asking me to lie. I am asking you to choose, she replied. Your control, or my dignity. Weller righted. The words hit harder than any accusation. This is not fair, he said. She let out a quiet, humorless breath. None of this has been fair. Another silence followed, heavier than the last. If the board pushes, he said finally, they will expect distance, publicly, emotionally. Her chest tightened. Then give it to them. He stared at her. And what happens to us? She hesitated, then answered honestly. Then this marriage becomes exactly what it was always supposed to be. Rhytons, a contract. No protection, no promises, no illusions. He said nothing. That night, she packed a small bag and moved into the secondary bedroom without comment. He did not stop her. And as the door closed between them, she realized the greatest threat to their marriage was not her past, nor his power. It was the moment when pretending became easier than choosing each other. The board meeting was supposed to be routine. Glass walls, neutral faces, familiar pressure. She sat beside him at the long table, hands folded calmly in her lap, every inch the composed wife they expected. Across from them, the board chair cleared his throat. There have been concerns, he said, about the nature of this marriage, about risk. Silence followed. Then the CEO did something no one anticipated. He stood. There is nothing unclear about my marriage, he said evenly. But there is something unclear about your authority over it. Murmurs rippled through the room. He reached into his briefcase and placed a single document on the table, not the contract they expected, a termination notice. The marriage contract is void, he continued, effective immediately. She turned toward him, stunned. I am not married because it benefits this company, he said. I am married because I choose her. The room froze. If that costs me my position, he added calmly, then it costs me my position. It is wives. He looked at her then, not as a CEO, not as a negotiator, but as a man who had made a decision he could not undo. No more pretending, he said softly. No more contracts, only the truth. And for the first time, she understood. This was the moment the marriage stopped being fake. The building felt different when they left the boardroom. Not louder, not quieter, just lighter. They rode the elevator down in silence, but it was no longer heavy. When the doors opened, he did not step forward immediately. He turned to her instead. I meant every word, he said. She studied his face, searching for hesitation. There was none, only certainty. You gave up control, she said softly. I gave up a contract, he replied. Control was never worth losing you. Outside, the city moved as it always had. Busy, indifferent. But for the first time since she signed her name beside his, she felt like she was standing in her own life instead of borrowing someone else's. Weeks later, There was no contract drawer, no secondary bedroom, no rules written in ink. They rebuilt slowly, honestly. He learned how to listen without fixing. She learned how to trust without hiding. One evening, as they stood by the window where it had all begun, he reached for her hand. "This time," he said, "there is no agreement." And craze it. She smiled, squeezing his fingers. Good. Because what they had chosen was not protection, not power, and not performance. It was commitment. And for the first time, it was real.